showtime.
It's showtime. And here we go.
Welcome into another edition of the Movie Geek Podcast. I'm your host, George T., and as always, bringing you another review of a movie I just saw yesterday. It was a really, really good movie called Queen of the Ring. And I will get to all of it. I will try to make it spoiler-free, hopefully. Don't want to give too much of it away, but I'll try to leave out some parts. It is based on a true story. How true, though, is some of it? Well, we'll dive into it a little later because I did some research on the actual book and the people involved in this movie. But for the most part, this is very accurate and very true about the first $1 million female athlete, Mildred Burke. So, before we get into that review, I will finish up the coming to streaming service movies this weekend. I did the box office ones on the Mickey 17 one, so let's look at Control Freak. That is going to be on Thursday of this week on Hulu. Stars Kelly Marie Tran. She is infested with a parasite that is controlling her mind. Seems pretty horrific. So that looks pretty good. Saw a little trailer for it. Looks pretty good. On Max, The Parenting. This is a horror comedy about a haunted family. A lot of good actors in it. Brian Cox is in it. Lisa Kudrow. One of my favorite indie actresses of all time, Parker Posey, is in it. She's hysterically funny. And there's many, many more in this film. So it looks pretty good. I'll probably see both of these movies. And I'm definitely going to see the one on Netflix on Friday, Electric State, which is the Russo brothers movie starring Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt. That was one of my most anticipated movies of 2025, so I'm looking forward to it, and I'll have a review for that hopefully next week. So, there's like I said in the other one, there's a lot of movies and they're coming out fast, whether it be on demand or in the theaters. So this movie had some hype to it, but for some reason didn't produce any money or didn't give the box office numbers for some reason. When I was going through the list of the top 5 movies of the week, it wasn't even listed. I looked it up on the Google machine, and it said no financial data recorded. Kind of weird. But anyway, if you are a wrestling fan, you will love this movie. It has a lot of accuracy to it. Even if you're not a wrestling fan, this one is definitely a story of perseverance. Obviously, it's definitely a heartwarming film, and it just tells people never to give up, basically. And it involves 2 people. The main one is obviously Mildred Burke. Mildred Bliss is her actual name, and Billy Wolf is the other main character in this. Billy Wolf is a former wrestler who's still traveling the country, but he's a trainer, and he's kind of like a sideshow act, basically. So Mildred is in the film working for her mother at the diner. She has an interest in wrestling. Why? You don't, um, you never know. But she just wanted more out of her life, and she really took a liking to wrestling. Now, in the late 20s and early 30s, women's wrestling was banned in a lot of states, or women could not wrestle each other. Um, it was a lot of, well, two women can't really wrestle, or uh, one would be butch and wouldn't be attractive, or basically, two half-naked women rolling around. People didn't want to see that. That was what they were telling people. So if you were a women wrestler back then, you had to fight men in a lot of states. So there were not a lot of women doing it, but that's kind of what it was. It was more a sideshow act than it was real wrestling. So Mildred goes to the event. She sees Billy Wolf and starts to understand, why he's a heel and so on and so forth. He walks into the restaurant she worked at, and she's like, "I want to become a wrestler." And he turns her down right away. Says, "You're too skinny. You'll get broken in half. Like, you can't do it." So time goes by, months go by. Billy walks back in, and her mother um, tells her to make sure he does not leave without giving you a tryout. Now, Mildred is played amazingly by Emily Britt Ricard. Not a wrestler, but she really, really made you think she was. Like, she really got into the character. She really worked all the angles, and I know she worked with a lot of the wrestlers on the set. There were a lot of them: WWE, former WWE, AEW, TNA, you name it. They were in there and they were helping out. They also, some of them do have cameos. Billy Wolf is played by Josh Lucas. Um, he's a really good actor in his own right. Um, he is joined on the road by his son, Jay Bill, played by Tyler Posey. And Jay Bill is probably close to Mildred's age. So they kind of grow up together. Now, Mildred gets a tryout with um, Billy's company, and he's like, "Okay, we're not going to take it easy on you. This is how we're going to work it." So he tells one of the guys, "Go out there and make her, feel like one of the guys." So he picks her up and body slams her, takes the wind out of her. He pins her 1, 2, 3. So everybody's like, "Well, I guess tryout's over." And she gets up and she brushes herself off and she says, "No, your matches you go best out of 3. So he's got to beat me twice." And they're like, "Okay, let's see how this goes." And lo and behold, she runs off the ropes, hits him with a lariat, which is a clothesline. Then goes and body slams him. Just picks him up and body slams him, and it starts to make everybody go, "Wait a minute, what is going on?" And then she puts him in an armbar and makes him tap out. And Billy stands up and he goes, "Wait, hold on. Wait, did you guys work that out? Was this part of a work?" And so on. And the guy's like, No, she really hurt my arm." And he was like, "Oh, I guess we have something here." So he pulls her aside and says, "Okay, why do you really want to become a wrestler?" And she's like, "Well, because I really want to entertain and I want to tell a story." And he's like, "Well, can you be a dancer or a singer?" And she's like, "No, I have no talent for that." I just want to tell a story. And he's like, well, you could be a writer too. And she's like, no, I want to entertain, and I really want to do this. So he puts her in a carnival where he kind of scripts out matches so it can draw a crowd. Uh, so he's like, 25 cents will win you possibly $25 if any man in the audience can beat the Kansas Tornado Mildred Burke. And she turns to him and goes, my last name is Bliss. And he goes, no, ignorance is bliss. Your last name is Burke now. It's more catchy. So the first guy gets in the ring and she winds up beating him really quickly. Second guy gives it to her a little bit and then winds up getting caught in her alligator lock, which for wrestling fans is almost like an STFU, um, and basically, you know, makes them tap. So they start to draw a crowd. Women are watching it, men are watching it. So they keep this going for a few months and so on. And then eventually, Billy proposes to uh, Mildred, and she's like, I don't know about this. Like, right now I just want to learn the business. I want to learn from you. I want to train, and I want to be able to wrestle other women. And again, Billy's like, well, we can do that all together if you want to marry me. And she kind of agrees, and so they keep going. So now they start to find women. Uh, there aren't many women out there, obviously, um, that wrestle at this time because, again, a lot of states are banning wrestling for women. So they come across a few women that come in. One is played by uh, Francine Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's daughter, Mae Young. For wrestling fans, you know Mae Young as WWE Hall of Famer. Obviously, Mildred is posthumously entered into the WWE Hall of Fame, um, but Mae Young, you would know from her time in WWF, and then through the Attitude Era, and she was always around, on screen for WWE for a while until she had passed away. So Mae Young was a serious wrestler, and so obviously the story was not about her, but she was always around Mildred. She taught Mildred. She was being taught by Mildred back. So they had a great relationship in that regard. Um, and even after the new girl that came in, Elvira Snodgrass, played by Maria Aguirre Venus. I don't know exactly how this. Again, you guys know me. I just butcher the English language. So Elvira was a young brunette who, oh, black-haired girl, sorry, um, wanted to join the group. And of course, we start to realize why Billy is who he is. Takes her into a tent and obviously cheats on Mildred. So not only is he a sideshow carny, basically, but he's a womanizer. And I guess at that time he could get away with it because if women wanted to wrestle, he was the only act in town, really. Um, so she obviously finds out and she's unhappy, so she wants to leave. So Billy says, well, unfortunately, we're business partners, so you have to stay or you can walk away. And again, it's kind of that abusive, like, well, if you leave, then somebody else is going to take your place, and this is going to be over. So she's like, well, we've got a date in 6 hours in another city. I will not ride with you, but I will ride with her. So Elvira gets another thing, tells her exactly what Billy said to her when she started. So she's kind of hearing it, and so she knows that this guy is just no good. So obviously the engagement was off. But she really needed Billy to get going. So they bring along some other wrestlers, and they start to gain an audience. And so one day, um, a woman by the name of June Byers shows up unannounced, and during one of the carnival wrestling events, wants to fight Mildred. Uh, June was played by Camille, who is a former NWA World Champion and was a part of AEW. I'm not sure if she still is. I've read conflicting reports about it. But anyway, she's a very intimidating type woman. They called her the Brick House, and she is very, very powerful. So for this role, she plays the bad guy. Uh, she gets in the ring with Mildred. They wrestle around a little bit, uh, and Mildred winds up beating her, and it doesn't sit well with her. So she takes out her knee, and after that, she leaves the ring. Elvira and May chase her away. Uh, Billy at that point is beside himself because he knows that his meal ticket is pretty much gone. He has May in the back pocket, but May is very serious, a very serious wrestler. She can pretty much beat anyone. Uh, she they alluded to she could beat anyone very very quickly, and um, so he can't really mold her. But at the same time, if he does, it's going to put Mildred in a bad spot, and so he still says he loves her and so on, but he really wants Mildred to be that kind of face. So um, J. Bill is saying, "Hey, Dad, we got to get her to the hospital. Her knee looks all busted open." And he's like, "No, no, no. We're going to give her 2 weeks off. We'll go on the road. We'll try to build, make some money out of that." Well, it didn't go well. He comes home after 2 weeks, and uh, they start fighting because he's upset that she's a bigger draw, and he hauls off and hits her, and rightfully so. She takes her son and leaves, goes back home. So she's not returning her phone calls. Her mom is like, "No, I'm proud of you," and meanwhile, she's trying to network with other territories at this time. So the governing body was known as NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, and it was territorial. So she was calling around to territories, and they kept saying, "Well, no, we know who you are. You are probably a bigger draw than probably some of our guys, so we can't bring you in." Or they would say, "Well, we can't have one in wrestling. Uh, it's banned in our areas, so good luck to you, whatever." So California put on a very strict rule at that time, but they had a women's wrestling organization out there, which obviously she didn't know because she was from a small town in Kansas, and she she winds up getting a phone call from May, who's in California at the time, saying that there is a woman coming your way um, that has a championship belt, and Billy is trying to make it arrangements for you to wrestle her for a championship. And she's like, "Really? I don't really want to be with him," so on and so forth. So Billy shows up at the house right after May calls, and she's like, "Look, we are business partners. There's no more after this. If we make money, it's 50-50, so on and so forth. But I'm never going to marry you. I'm never going to sleep with you. I'm never going to love you." And he's like, "That's fine. We'll be business partners." And so uh, they make a pact, and they go off. And in 1937, uh, this is now, I think, again, the time jump is hard to know, but about 8 or 9 years after. So this is a whole lot going on in that time, but the time jump is not really explained well. But she finally gets an opportunity to fight for a belt. Um, Tony Storm, who is AEW World Champion at the time, plays Clara Mortensen. She was the California Girl, and she has the belt. So Billy and her managers are trying to work through how do we get Mildred a championship, and her people was like, no, 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 we're gonna give Claire the belt. We're gonna have her keep it for a while, and then eventually down the road, it'll build drama where Mildred will get a chance. So Mildred was taken back by it, and she was like, "So I guess this happens at all levels, like it's political." And he's like, "Yeah, unless you do a shoot match." And she's like, well, "Shoot match? What was that?" And he's like, "It's a real match, where you go off script and it becomes real, and you can change the outcome however it fits." So she's like, all right, I'll keep it in mind. So this goes on for months and months. And finally, uh, Morton, Mortensen's people, um, Billy comes in and says, "Hey, I think it's about time we do this. There's so much Bob for Millie, and we need to give her a title." And they're like, "No." So they start fighting in there. Billy comes back to the room, the dressing room, and he's bloodied. And Mildred goes, "I think it's time for a shoot match." And he's like, "Are you ready for this?" She's like, I know I can do this." He said, "It's a shoot match." So they go out, and uh, Claire wins. Claire loses the first fall, wins the second fall, but then goes completely off script. And Mildred beats her, which draws some anger from Claire's side, and Claire disappears after that because her people didn't want to work with them anymore. So Mildred now has starting to get an army of women, uh, and it draws the attention of another promoter, Jack Pfeiffer, played by Walter Goggins, and he is intrigued, but at the same time he knows that women can draw, but can he get away with it in his territory? Because again, women weren't allowed to wrestle other women in a lot of states around this country, and it was, so hard to understand why all this happened, or why women couldn't wrestle. But again, she persevered, and so she had some more wrestlers come along. Gladys Gilliam was one of them, played by Deborah Allen Wolf. She was a young, kind of very crazy kind of woman, and she made a really good heel. So Billy made sure that she got her chance. Um, but Billy treated her very poorly, because she was trying so hard to impress him. She did one night almost wind up sleeping with him because he promised her so much stuff, and she realized, oh my god, this is a bad idea. But she really, really wanted to wrestle, so she did a lot of things in the ring that she probably didn't want to. And a little later on, I'll explain what happened to her. So you've got that. And then Jackie Robinson became the first black baseball player in Major League Baseball. So that brought in women of color to Billy's stable. And one in particular, Babs Wingo, played by Demarius Lewis. Um, she was tall, very tall, athletic woman. She brought in a couple of her friends and really became a very helpful figure to Mildred. Became very good friends with Mildred and was really by her side through a lot of difficulty. Um, again, Billy and Mildred's relationship was very abusive, even though they weren't together married wise, but he did abuse her a lot. You know, and it's hard. It's hard to you know realize that all she wanted to do was wrestle, and this guy was trying to take advantage of her. He beat her up. There was one scene a little later on in the film where um, he had a new girl that he wanted to put over, uh, younger and cuter, and she, she was like, "I'm not dropping the belts because if I do, you're going to take everything from me." Because they did get married in a ceremony, but not a wedding one. It was a marriage of convenience. So he and her were equals, but he also put in a loophole that she noticed later, and she knew at some point she was going to get buried, and he wanted her to drop the belt, and she refused at first because she knew if that happened, she would get kicked to the can and she would lose everything. So she made it a point that I'll drop the belt for business if I get half of everything and we go our separate ways because I don't need you anymore. I can form some kind of an alliance. And he was like, I don't know about this. Let's talk it over. So they go for a drive, and he beats the shit out of her, and it's really sad. Jay Bill was very protective of Mildred, also her son, um, who now is a teenager. Um, you know, he gets beaten up trying to help uh, his mother, and she goes back home to her mother. Her mother wants her to call the cops and press charges, but she knows if she does that, um, again, she's going to lose everything because Billy owns a lot of the rights, and she also feared if she did say something that her fans would look at her differently. So she bore the weight of the people's perception instead of doing probably what women would have done now. And it's just so powerful to see that she just wouldn't stop giving up on her dream. And she had women in her corner. May was in her corner. Babs was in her corner. And it comes to a head when um, Billy and her decide to, he wants to actually divorce her. Tries to literally take everything from her, and he winds up doing so. So now she's at a point where she wants to give up, and her mom says, "No, you can't give up now. Go and do something." So she goes to the NWA offices and talks to the commissioners. One is played by Jim Cornette, who was the head NWA Alliance uh, person in charge. Um, there is also the rest of the heads of the territories. One is Vince Senior, um, talking about drawing a crowd at Madison Square Garden and so on, and how his son wants to take over the business. You had other guys saying, "Well, we can bring you in, but you're going to have to you're going to have to show us what you can do. So Mildred set up a wrestling organization for herself. Billy had his. So some of the women went with Billy, and she went. She had hers. So Mae Young stayed with her, and Babs also stayed with her. Um, and it was after an incident with Gladys. Gladys was pushing so hard, and she wrestles a tag team match with May against Elvira and one of the other girls, and she was hurt, and she had to wrestle June in the main event, and it was in her hometown. And May was like, "You can't wrestle. You're hurt. You're not even prepared to." And June is unsafe. June was kind of again the bully. Um, her spotlight was her spotlight, and so May said, "You know what? I'm going to go take care of this." So May goes and tries to talk to Billy, and Billy doesn't want to hear it because he's like, "Oh no, she'll be fine. June will be fine." And she runs into June in the back, and she says, Gladys is hurt, so you need to take care of her. We're not in the business of hurting people." And June turns to her and says, "I can hurt anyone I want." And she goes out there and throws Gladys around and really does a number on her, and then throws her out of the ring, and she has a brain hemorrhage. That was the tipping point for a lot of the women to go with Mildred, because Billy was unsafe and he didn't care how he was running his business. So Billy thought it would be a good idea um, to double book. So basically, Millie would set up her place, and then Billy would jump right in behind her the next day. So um, Jack took up with Millie and said, he's trying to hurt your business. Um, she was having trouble making payments to the girls, but the girls knew, or ladies knew, that she cared, and they were going to do anything they could for her. Eventually, some of them started defecting because they knew they could make more money with Billy, and that's when Millie figured out how to win the crowds over and take away from Billy. And she told Babs, or she had Babs, take the reins and become her own woman. And um, her and Babs have a fight, and they get attacked. And because Babs was a bad guy, she was supposed to take advantage and win the title, but she decides to not do that, and then gives a powerful speech, and everyone starts to. And Jack turns to Millie's son and says, "Wow, that's some storytelling. Like, you guys are gonna do wonders because Billy doesn't know how to tell a story." So it turns. Now Billy's in trouble, and it's he wants to finish Millie at this point. So he has a confrontation with Jack. Well, not really a confrontation, but he talks to Jack and says, "Look, we need to stop. We need to join forces." And Jack's like, "Why?" "Because you're losing money, and you're a big con artist, a womanizing, uh, you know, asshole." And he's like, washed up, and Millie is doing what you should have been doing. So Jack says, "Okay, we can do this. We can combine, but you're going to have to work with Millie, and you're going to have her keep her belt because Billy's organization did not have a belt because the NWA wouldn't recognize a second woman's belt. So Millie had the belt. So eventually Billy gives in and he sends June to be his person. So obviously the movie goes full circle. June was the one that hurt Millie. Millie is now a lot older and a lot more frail. She's had numerous knee problems, uh, but she really wants to embrace it, along with her son and Jack. So this is where we get the big confrontation. So they don't trust each other. Millie knows that Billy could double cross at any point and change the match. The NWA was under the impression that June was going to wind up winning the belts because that was what they were told. Millie never agreed to it because Millie didn't know that Billy was working an angle. So once she found out, right before she went out, she runs into Gorgeous George. Uh, she had ran into him years ago when he was first coming up. Uh, she ran into him again in when her popularity was really taking off, and he was having trouble making headway. And she had a pep talk with him, and again, he was a small town kid, and she was like, "You really got to show your personality. You gotta win the crowd." So he became Gorgeous George, who was profound in creating characters like Ric Flair, Muhammad Ali, and other guys because he was so flamboyant and so over the top. He had found his niche, but he also played a very feminine male, which May was a lesbian. So there was a funny scene where she goes, "George, you're really not gay, are you?" And so that was kind of a funny exchange. Uh, so Gorgeous George says, "Millie, you can do this, and you might have to shoot this match." And she's like, "I think I'm going to have to because I don't trust him." So they go out, and the referee is in Billy's pocket. You can tell by the way it's unfolding. So again, everything's working against Millie. So finally, Millie decides to give up a fall after June takes her leg out. So now she's kind of crawling into the corner. Her son is, saying, "Are you okay? Everything's gonna be all right. And we can stop this." And she's like, "I'm not gonna stop it." But he's like, "Your knee is so bad." So all of a sudden he resets it, and she's in a lot of pain. But at that point, May and her look at each other, and she said, "I'm shooting this, and she's gonna have to kill me to win the belt. I don't trust them at all." So they go out there, and it starts to go off the rails really quickly, which to the referee and Billy looking at each other, going, "Oh my God, she's gonna shoot." She winds up breaking June's nose with a headbutt. June at that point was just big power. She wasn't ready for 60 minutes of combat. So once she had her nose broken, she couldn't breathe, and Millie was able to take advantage of that. So she winds up getting a pin, and they go out for one more, obviously, pinfall. But time is starting to run out because they had a 60-minute time limit. And at that point, June couldn't breathe. Millie was barely walking at that point, and they were just slugging it out. slugging it out, just trying to hurt each other. Finally, time runs out, but now everybody is looking at each other going, do we just let them go, or do we call this a draw? And they're not understanding what's going on. The crowd is all into this match, and so they're like, well, maybe we should just let it go. And then eventually, um, the commissioner rings the bell. So now nobody knows who's going to win because it's a draw. So basically, Millie would keep the belt. And so uh, they get on the mic and say, due to time limit expiration, and then Millie grabs the mic and she's like, no, we're not going to a draw. If she can't finish, I win. And at that point, she didn't want to go. June did not want to go back in the ring, and Billy kept saying, "Get her in the ring, get her in the ring." Jay Bill was the one that finally stood up to his dad after all this time, saying, "No, she's done. This is my wife. We're not finishing this match. Millie wins." Who Jay Bill had feelings for Millie because again he grew up with her. They were on the road so much. He knew his father had screwed up so many times, and he stood by and watched and just never said anything. I mean, he said things to other people, but he never said it to his father. So basically, the NWA said, due to a draw, Millie is still your champ. And that's how the movie kind of ends. And again, it's really well done. It's definitely 2 thumbs up. It's definitely up there with The Wrestler and Iron Claw. Okay, so again, true story. Obviously, the first woman to make over $1 million in her career. Was the pioneer for women. I read in her bio after the movie that she helped put wrestling all over the world, Australia, New Japan, uh, and Canada. And so she did so much for the sport. So Billy wound up going away, not to jail, but just going away from the public eye because, again, he was a two-bit con artist and people just didn't want to work with him anymore. May became a big star up in the Northern Territory, and then she eventually wound up in the Southern Territories where the Fabulous Moolah was, but we don't actually see her in this movie. But those two were synonymous. Obviously, if you're a wrestling fan, you know that. So, again, a lot of it was true. There are some parts that were not true, like Mildred was not a waitress in a diner. She was actually a court stenographer. So it's very interesting how Billy would have met her at that point. It was definitely one part of the movie where that did not take place. That was the night that Gladys was hurt in the movie. She dies from her brain injury. She actually lived until I think it was 2008. Died of Alzheimer's. So it works for the brain hemorrhage thing because she had put her body through hell and so on. But again, it's kind of better for the story in that regard. But obviously Gladys is not alive to see the movie, so but her family probably saw it and was like, wait, they killed mom or grandma or whatever, So there was that. Billy was portrayed the right way, and he was married multiple times. and divorced multiple times. He was bankrupt most of his life. So, again, that's why he had to do what he had to do. But, again, this was a very powerful movie. Ashley and I did see it. Ashley did not want to be on camera with this one. And I know why. Because, again, very powerful for women. So if you do get to see this movie, I definitely think it's worth it. So again, you don't have to be a wrestling fan to understand how powerful the message is in this movie, and it really hits home when in the totality of the movie. And again, some of it was a little ambitious, but at the same time, it tells a great story. Mildred's story is a great story. All right, so with that being said, next week's episodes will have another list of the top 5 movies for the weekend, maybe some reviews. So I will have probably multiple episodes. Keep checking for shorts. Thank you for all your help with those shorts, watching those and liking them. Again, this has been a really fun thing, so keep it up, guys. Listen on Spotify if you're not able to watch on YouTube, and I will see you guys all at the movies.
You like that, baby? Let him know where I came from, yeah!
See you next time. Bye.
Waiting for you. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Hasta la vista, baby.
That's all, folks.